middle school teacher, and I know when I first contemplated the idea of teaching middle school, I thought that sounded fairly frightening. I think it's the reputation of the children for being unruly, although I can testify that I think they're more unruly at the high school level. And it takes a lot of like kind of innovative, if you can use innovative tactics to ease the situation for yourself, it will pay off in spades. So I want to share some of my favorite techniques that I've developed. So it's the beginning of the year. Here come the students. Okay, hello class, everybody. I've got some rules to lay down for you. Check it out. Here are my classroom rules. And their eyes are starting to glaze over like, here we go again. I'm like, well, on second thought, I bet you could recite to me what the rules of a classroom are supposed to be, okay? But check this out first. Classroom rules. Rule number 1. Always show respect. Respect for whom? Okay, they can easily tell me that. Let's see, respect for the teacher, respect for fellow students, respect for the classroom, respect for the schools. Am I forgetting anything here? They know all this, so they can tell me. And I say, okay, now rule number 2. See rule number 1. So for me, respect is what it's all about. And then I add the significant new piece, and I say, and guess what? Those rules apply for you, and those rules apply for me. That's right. I have to show you respect. And the response is amazing. I don't think these students have heard a teacher say that before. And they're just kind of like, the room gets really quiet. And then they smile. And I think this is the foundation of a respectful classroom. I need to model it. You need to follow it. And that seems to work. When a student is incessantly talking and maybe having even a series of days without good self-monitoring, that student is first threatened, and then if the threat has to be made real, it's banishment to Siberia. Well, Siberia is a remote place on the globe, and it's a remote place in the classroom as well. So the student is temporarily removed from his usual place in the classroom, sitting with his friends, whatever that may be, and moved over there for 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks, during the working part of the period, that student has to remember that's your seat, and if you want to come back and join your friends, you need to have 2 weeks of quietly working on your own. And it's really interesting the effect that it has, because I have seen students transformed, even to the point of requesting to stay in that area during the self-working time so that they are away from the temptations of their friends, something they probably had discussions with parents and other teachers about. So it's a very nice little solution that's kind of amusing but effective. So the 2-minute timeout is one of my favorite discipline pieces, and it goes back to when I first began teaching in a high school setting, and I had some very difficult classes that I took over, and there was a lot of issues, and I noticed at one point that after I had kicked out some student that he kind of snuck back into the room, and I thought, you know, that's a good idea. I think I'm going to work with that. So then that developed into the 2-minute timeout. It's like, okay, you need to step, you need to step outside for 2 minutes and kind of get a new attitude and come back in quietly and ready to work. You think you can do that? So out they go, and they might say, well, I don't have a watch. I don't know when it'll be 2 minutes. And I say, well, count to 120 like the other kids do. Sure enough, the door opens kind of slowly, they peek in, they come back in quietly to their seat, good to go, totally ready to get back into the groove. I've had a few come in and they're like, here I am. And that just doesn't fly. And I'm like, and there you are, and back out you go. Come back in quietly. That's your second chance. And that's all it takes. For the most part, once they do the one or two of those 2-minute timeouts, I really don't continue to have problems with that child in my classroom. All right, I can see we have a real attitude problem here. You're pretty angry. And I want to give you a chance to calm down and come back in when you're ready. Just stay right out here until you're ready, okay? I'll check back with you. Thank you. Hello. How's it going?
Bad.
You ready?
No.
Not ready? Okay, I'll check back. Well, you ready?
No.
Okay. How about it? You ready now?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, come on back into the classroom. So the difference between the 2-minute timeout and are you ready is the time span. The 2-minute timeout is usually a sufficient correction when some student is off task or has suddenly just kind of been loud or just something like, oh, out, that kind of thing, and come back in 2 minutes. With the are you ready, that's when there's a little more, it's a little more complicated, and the student is not going to just self-correct by going out of the room, generally because they're too angry and too hostile, and maybe it's something they brought with them to your class. And so what you're doing is you're giving them choices, and choices work very well with students, much more effectively than punishment. Generally speaking, punishing a child that's already angry is only going to make your life tougher. You really don't want to go there if you can be a little more creative and find a way to help the student save face and get back on their feet. And sometimes it's just a little sort of alone time, some me time for the child, and done in a respectful way where I don't need to add any little criticisms. You know, it's like, okay, you're angry, you got a little attitude, here, chill. And when you're ready, you're welcome to come back and join us. Another very effective tool to keep your class on track. Okay, sometimes I hear myself sounding like a broken record, saying your name and your name throughout the class. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's a little bored with that. So it's come time for my behavior plan. Doesn't that sound like fun?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, it's really very simple. You don't have to look so, don't get your attitudes going and all that. Okay, it's really very simple and amazingly effective, and we all can all go on and have a happy existence together after we take care of this, all right? So I'm going to give you a card and a pen, and a card for you and a pen, and one for me, and here's how it works. Okay, you're going to put your name on this card, and I'm going to put your name on my card, both of your names, okay? And during class, if I have to say your names for any reason in some kind of disciplinary way, like stop talking, you, out, anything like that, you have to put a check mark on your card. And I'll put a check mark on my card, okay? And at the end of class, you're going to turn your cards back in each day, and then I'll see, okay, did you put the check marks that I put? And it better match, because that way we can solve the problem in a nice, easy way. We don't have to go to some other kind of level like a parent conference, all right? How long does this work? For 2 weeks, you're going to be keeping a card like this. Now let me tell you a secret. The last 2 times that I did this with students, guess how many days they had check marks? Guess. Guess how many check marks ended up on their cards? 1. That's all it took from me saying their names over and over and over and over, like, oh, boring, to 1 check mark, and now 2 weeks, no more check marks. So you have to have 2 weeks, 10 days with no check marks, and we're done. Okay? We're done. That behavior plan is the most amazing thing I have ever discovered as a class manager. It's almost miraculous, and I tend to forget that I have it because it's one of those tools that's most effective if you don't use it a lot. And it's especially great if the students have never heard of it. Well, it's when you're at your wit's end and you're like, what am I going to do with this person? I wish he wasn't in my class. And then amazingly, it's no exaggeration. Generally speaking, what it does is it encourages the child, the student, to own his own behavior. And it changes the game. And so if they have to put a little mark and be aware, I have just disrupted the class, I have to put a little check mark here, they don't like to do that. That makes them feel uncomfortable. They're suddenly kind of looking in a mirror. And it shuts down like this. I've used it with students that other teachers complain about too. And then I'm proud to say that once I have done that, I never have to do it again. It's just the problem is gone. You know, what can I say? Whoa, you're late.
No, the bell just rang.
No. By definition, if you're not in there in your seat when the bell rings, you're late. So have you ever had tardiness training?
No.
Okay, let me tell you how it works. There's 3 parts to it. Part 1, you apologize to the teacher. Anytime you're late to a class, you want to apologize to the teacher. By the way, instead of giving detention for being late, I like to train. Okay, sound good?
Yeah.
All right, so you're going to apologize. You're going to explain why you're late, blame yourself. And thirdly, you're going to tell me about how in the future it's going to be different. Are you ready?
I'm sorry, Miss Davison, for being late to class. I wasn't paying attention to the time. I was with my friends in the library.
Okay, and in the future...
In the future, I will pay attention on the time.
All right, thank you. Come on in. Part of the philosophy behind the tardiness training is that my concern is not only that students do well in my class, but also that they can take these better behavior skills and generalize to their school experience. And so that's the way I represent it with tardiness training. I say anytime you're late to a class, you want to apologize to the teacher by name. That works well and kind of takes some of the annoyance out of it for the teacher. And I noticed that when the first time a student did that with me and said, you know, I'm very sorry I'm late, I wasn't walking fast enough, and that impressed me. So why not train students and kind of share that and pass it along? And there's almost a joy factor in it when they're in a situation that they recognize as one that's usually somewhat punitive, and then we kind of like convert it and transform it into a learning experience and a chance for them to feel more responsible. And maybe the next time that they're the one that's demonstrating it for the other kids, so they're even in a sort of a leadership part, and that can always resonate well for you. An angry adult is a frightening thing. For me too. I don't think you have to be a child to be a little bit nervous when you see an adult losing it. So for your own sake and for the sake of your students, focus on this mantra. I'm not angry. I'm annoyed. They're okay with that, you know. If you say, hey, knock it off, that's annoying, they'll kind of go, you know. And it's all good. They'll correct their behavior, and they're kind of programmed to do that, conditioned to do that. But once they perceive your behavior as angry, this is a whole new ballgame, and it's one you don't really want to initiate if you can help it. I mean, don't be angry easily. Stick to the annoyance thing, and you'll find that things go much more smoothly, and that the little things don't escalate at nearly the same rate. All right, so if you can maintain that condition of respect in your classroom. I think that's the key right there, because when you don't respect somebody, who does that reflect on? Is that really a judgment of the other person, or does that reflect on you yourself? You're the one that's not being respectful. And so if you can kind of wrap your mind around that and embrace it, then you have a chance to change the game in your classroom. And I have found that, seriously, every single student, no matter how they are generally behaving in your school, will make a truce with you in your classroom, a nearly perfect truce, as long as you maintain that standard of respect. Thanks for listening.